Hey guys, Mustached Tom here to review the movie Monkey Man. Now, I came across this movie pretty late, all things considered, but I really got around to it, so I figured I'd go back and review it properly now that I've had some filled time to do such a thing. With that being said, the movie starts out with a story about a monkey man named Hanuman, as they are referred to in the Hindi language. And this is told to him as a kid, this our main protagonist, as it were. And we learn about how this individual in the story was hungry, but ate the sun and was punished for his overburdens to what he was seeking, apparently. We cut to a fight club some years later, where we indeed follow this monkey man, and it is one individual named Bobby who, yes, fights in a monkey mask. And he loses this fight, and it turns out that he is sort of the punching bag of this area, as it were. But he gets told he won't get paid as much if he doesn't sell the bit of being a monkey man, unfortunately. Now, we see that these ring of individuals, they seem to have a hatred of Christians, and after seeing the movie in full, I can see where that would come from, considering this religion's background seems to be quite opposed to certain things that Christians, or this group of Hinduism would be in favor of, or the other religions that happen to occupy this land. Anyway, so as I mentioned, he doesn't get paid, but he wants to have a new job where he can get in with some of the high names. So he gets in with this lady in particular after this bit passes around information from hand to hand to see it through back to him about seeking a better job opportunity to make a better buck. So he's hired on as a chef, and when doing so, and after the fact, he goes to a gunman and takes a revolver as a gesture of things to come. So, he tells this inn guy that was checking in on him regularly at the chef area, to bet on him for this next match that he is going to be a part of. And if he won, he would get a promotion. So he wins the match, and he gets indeed promoted to work on the higher end, or the VIP section of this area. So he's shown to the top guys, he's shown to this area where the dirty cops lay to, as well as we see how these individuals have the reign to grope on women, as this is sort of like the equivalent of I guess a dance club, but with the rules set to you can touch the ladies in such ways, I guess is the best way of putting that. Anyway, so he heads outside, feeds a little dog, and that dog becomes perpetually returning as one of the women there that works there says that in so feeding this dog, it will return in hope of lieu of getting more food. And in lieu of his own work, he gets ushered into what's called the Heavens Club, as it's referred. So, he spots one such individual dirty cop. In fact, we see the backstory in full in seeing how these cops, in particular, were settled in to attack his hometown and indeed kill his own mom. So it seems like he has found his reserved target. With gun in hand, he finds himself in the restroom with one of these individuals, but can't quite get the shot on, and instead is assaulted by various people that are trying to get to him, now that he has revealed his hand, as it were. So, after he makes his way, he eventually is trying to flee. He ends up in this other, establishment of a similar nature, but gets attacked there as well by the owner. And he is, almost, able to do away with things, but not quite. And so they give chase some more, and he makes his way to this rooftop area where essentially they eventually fire upon him while on said roof, and he ends up in the water, during which we get more of this backstory revealed about how simple and clear his life was with his mom in it, and how the cops set up this entire situation up for them to have an excuse to attack this entire area. He is restored in this religious temple, and the owner, or the high priest, I guess we'll call him, or Alpha as his name entails, shows him to a shrine to Partifi/Shiva, male and female, god and goddess, tortured and healed, as it were. And this is sort of at this information is sort of behest on the attack on the news we see in this movie over transgender people. And now we're getting this information about this god, or gods, plural, or, however you would want to explain this entity or entities. Despite this, it is with such knowledge and wanting to have a better purpose, and Alpha saying as such, he begins to embody on a spiritual journey where he is pushed to his limit with a poisonous substance, quote-unquote, and he is once again forced to relive this night that has happened, and we see the most clearest iteration of it, how he was there, how he witnessed his mom's death. That was something that was not known to us at the time, though there seemed to be several hints about it since throughout the movie he has been so utterly pushing for this direct conflict, as it were. And so, with such a vision bestowed, he begins to train And thus we cut to a montage of training his body and his mind to fight for a better purpose. And during this, his, transition, we also see another odd transition of him splitting open his own stomach and seeing this golden seed, and we see a monkey, in reference to, well, the monkey man in the beginning of the story. And in fact, there seems to be several indications throughout this movie that seem to connect him to that story that the mom told at the beginning of the movie, as we see throughout this whole story unfold. So, we can see how he burned his hand in trying to protect his mom from being burned, and all this clarity stuff from the flashbacks that he's now getting direct access to. So again, he's training with the rhythm of the beats, and we see that the situation on the news is getting way worse, as individuals, as I just mentioned, are getting shot up in the news. And thus we hear the leader, or up-and-coming potential leader, talk about this speech, about how he will be a person of the people and all this stuff. And I digress as we move on to him taking some of the church money and making a way to a new fight, where he has himself bet on, through the community and through some other kid, to once again vote on him to make the money. Thus, once again, with the monkey moniker back on, he wins with just one kick, which is something he was unable to do prior. Though he's fought with a second fight, a bear, this huge man, though he finally begins to embrace the monkey moniker, as it were, putting on, for the first time, the monkey performance, as it were, or personifying that to its extreme, as he wiggles around and wins the match as well. Once again, getting all that money, that extra money, after having bet those bets on him be the outcome. So he sends the more money back, so that way they could repair, perhaps. And in the meantime, he would make himself quite the target, as he would make his way back to this area which he infiltrated prior, in which these speeches are being held, or their celebration, or their pre-celebration, as it were, is being held. And thus, he makes his way there with the purified monkey mask, which he only wears for literally a second, and then he throws it off, which I was like, oh. You could have committed to the bit at that point. I mean, if I were in charge of the movie, I would have had him do the entire monkey persona, but that's just me. Instead of just the mask. But whatever. So as the movie literally brings up John Wick, he goes John Wick on them. Well, not so much as with guns, but in terms of action and ability to turn guns and fight his way through several people. But when more and more several people come, his own squad backs him up, and thus a brawl in the area fights out. But he gets his targets, and he finally gets his revenge now that he has sought to it, that he's going to go far beyond that. So he reaches this guy, this other, potential religious figure, as it were, who's trying to use his words to get in real close, using that fancy philosophy to get in the few good stabs in. That is, after even such things, the Monkey Man retorts by using his own stabbed weapons to attack right back with those after the fact, and kills him. And after his little flurry, it ends with little kid's prayer. And that was, in essence, Monkey Man. And yeah, it definitely has a sense of John Wick. I mean, they have the little alludes to a dog being present and him having these abilities, or gaining these abilities. But I would say that it separates itself from the world of, say, John Wick and, this whole world of assassins and all of that, and rather hones its world in one in which transgender people, at least on the news, are being attacked, and this particular religion in tow seems to be very much in favor of, trans people are, shocker, they deserve the rights and, the ability to live life like any other person, That's great to hear, 2024, we too here struggle in the Americas to get this across, especially in the conservative circles. It would seem that this is something that they want to contend with, and it just so happens they, more so often than not, also happen to be Christians. So I thought that was an interesting little jab, I suppose. But it's all within the context of the movie. And it is furthermore interesting how they use this sort of individual, this man, who is already sort of seen as this celebrity-like figure, to essentially work his way into making these things, acceptable, or the norm, or what have you. And that really shows how one man, as this movie implies, can make the greatest difference. In fact, the movie seems to imply that, this is a quote from the movie, even a smallest of the embers can make something burn, or aka change. So this movie definitely is using some interesting dialogue to get across the idea that it really doesn't take a whole lot. You could take one man, as it were, and either have him shape the entire rest of the populace to be like anti-trans, like our antagonists are, or you can be the Ember. You could be like the Monkey Man, be elusive but still ever present, and then when the time is right, you strike down with a formidable force. Now, of course, violence is not an answer that I would turn to, or, seek out, obviously. But this is a more fictionalized version of the world after all, and it is an action movie first and foremost. So that is sort of the proclivity of this, and this is interesting because this is, well, at least produced by Jordan Peele, who is, from what I've seen, been primarily focused on horror, so it seems that he's expanding his territory into the world of action. And this movie definitely encapsulates that. And it is really interesting and cool to see, something from a different area, clearly of different religion too, make its way into the Western Hemisphere and see hopeful success. Because these things more often than not, don't typically find success, especially for something original, as far as I'm aware. I mean, this doesn't seem to be based on anything, as far as I know. So yeah, this is really cool to see as an action movie, and we see his motives very, very clearly, and we see how he's able to shift his motives from pure revenge to, as implied, fighting for that greater cause. Beyond oneself, beyond one person's revenge, to seek life of the pursuit of happiness, as it were, for all or many, in lieu of what these antagonists are trying to prevent, which is people living their lives, whether or not they choose to, whether it's change their gender outside of the typical associations with it, or any of that, some of which takes place in this movie. And so, yeah, I find myself really enjoying this movie. And it doesn't feel like the original John Wick, where, that went on to make a bunch of other movies, but then again, John Wick, when it was done, at least initially, it felt like that movie could have just ended too. So, at least when John Wick, the original, came out, it felt like that could have been just a solo movie, but then, someone came around and said, nope, that made enough money. So who knows if we'll see more of this Monkey Man or not. But I digress. I enjoyed it thoroughly anyway, regardless of what will become of this Monkey Man. But for this movie independently, for now, I'll give it a 9 out of 10. I think this is a really great movie. I think it could have used a little bit more of the character outside of, his sort of desire for revenge, I think. And maybe I think outside of that, I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have that, but I'm saying I think there could have been a little bit more meat on the skin in that regard. But I would still say overall that this movie is it's still extremely good outside of that. It's a minor issue, if anything. But that's my review of Monkey Man, and if you ended up enjoying it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One where I drove to my petition to help out small YouTubers. Second, to my PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly. And third, to my Discord server, where you can join, collab, chill, do all that cool stuff for free. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.